Can you describe the main characteristics of the F2012?
The F2012 has quite a few different characteristics from the previous cars. So starting from the front, going towards the back, I will go through them step by step. The front wing is an evolution of the wing we introduced at the last races of the last season. There we had introduced in order to learn some initial lessons about this topic, and we understood quite a lot, and we have further evolved it, and there's going to be further developments for the test, for the third test before the start of the season. The nose has a rather ungainly shape in the top. That is the result of the regulation, which requires us to have the nose quite low, and our aerodynamic desire to have the lower part of the chassis as high as possible. So even though it is aesthetically not very pleasing, we believe it is the most efficient aerodynamic solution for that area of the car. Going slightly further back, we get into one of the innovations of this car, which is the front suspension. For mainly aerodynamic reasons, we have selected the pull rod solution. It took us quite a lot of work from the structural and design office and vehicle dynamics departments in order to regain all the mechanical characteristics that we want the front suspension to have. I believe we've achieved that, but we also have, I believe, an aerodynamic advantage out of that solution. Moving back, we reach the area of the sidepod inlets. There we've reviewed completely the project, and we have changed our philosophy for the lateral crash structures. This has created a crash test we had to do, which was much more difficult in order to homologate the car, but it has left us with some aerodynamic advantage in the area of the main turning vanes and the vertical profiles that lie next to the sidepod inlet. Going further back, we have a much more narrow coke panel, especially at the low part of the coke panel, and that has been made possible out of a repackaging of the chassis and engine rear part, and also out of a gearbox that has been completely reviewed and made narrower. Whereas in the upper part of the side pods we have a fairly wide solution, because we have to host the new exhausts, which are a result of the new regulations regarding exhaust pipes. So we have had to abandon the low exhausts over the previous years because of the regulation. We spent quite a lot of resource and time in investigating the new exhaust scenarios, and in fact it will be an area of research during winter testing before we finalize the exact configuration for the first race. Regarding the gearbox, we have obviously got the external shape, which is new and narrower, but we have two different approaches from our side. One is the rear suspension. We've adopted, like quite a few of our opponents had in the previous years, a pull rod solution, but we've also hosted part of our radiator cooling on top of the radiator, on top of the gearbox, so as to reduce the cooling area required at the lateral part of the car. And the rear wing is basically similar to last year's, but we have refined it and pushed the sections of the aerodynamic profiles more in order to produce more downforce.
What was the target you defined at the start of the design phase?
At the start of the design phase of this car, we decided to apply much more aggressive targets, and we had as a principal objective to recover our aerodynamic deficit compared to our main competitors. We have established, and I think it's fairly clear, that we were down on aerodynamic performance compared to our components, so we've had to work quite hard to recover that.
And how much of carryover is on this car compared to the past?
The F2012 has a relatively small amount of carryover compared to previous cars. The very descriptions I made to you at the start indicate that we have actually reviewed almost the whole car. So physically, components that are either physically the same compared to the previous year or conceptually the same are much fewer, and therefore we've had to work much harder in the technical office and in the production in order to be able to do all this work.
Did you change something in terms of a philosophical approach to this design?
It is fairly clear that in the previous years we have been disappointing in our results, and therefore we decided to analyze the reasons of that and to change fundamentally the philosophy that we apply in the project. So we, having done this analysis, we also realized that we were probably a bit too conservative in some areas of the car, and we decided to follow a much more aggressive approach for this year. I think you can see the result of this aggression when you look at the car. We also hope that it will be visible at the track.
As chief designer of the Scuderia, do you feel this year any extra pressure?
As chief designer of the Scuderia, I do feel even more pressure than normal this year, because we are really all very keen and very eager to get back to being competitive and hopefully winning again. That pressure, I believe, is felt by everyone from the very upper levels of the company to the lower levels, almost by the whole company. This pressure is very tangible, and it's something that we're all working to hopefully get a good result and then to manage to relieve some of that pressure.
How much this car will change for the first race in Melbourne?
This car is still destined to change quite a lot before the first race. We have already been working in the wind tunnel and in the technical office on upgrades, aerodynamic upgrades for the car. But we also have some very important experiments we want to carry out in the first tests, so that we can then finalize the first race configuration.
There were rumors saying that the car is ugly. Do you share this opinion?
There's been some rumors saying that this car is ugly. I have to confess, but I'm not very objective on that I don't share that opinion. For me, I've got used to the bump on the nose. I think the rest of the car has been the fruit of a lot of detailed work. Ultimately, as far as I'm concerned, an ugly car is the one that doesn't win, and the beautiful car is the one that does win. So for now, I want to believe it's a beautiful car, and then we'll have to review that after the first few races.
After 1 year of experience on the Pirelli tires, how much work has been done to use the tires in a more performing way?
After 1 year of experience with the Pirelli tires, we have done quite a lot of work to understand better the tire characteristics and how to use the tires in a better way. We learned quite a few important things towards the second half of last season, and this has been taken into account quite a lot in the new car, in areas such as the suspension, the weight distribution, and the aerodynamic characteristics.